In today's show, we discuss another of our popular Dynamite Conspiracy episodes. And today we discuss what is the Great Reset.
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello my friend once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do?
You've had a bit of a lazy day today, is that right?
I have had a lazy day today. I know I'm paying for it because I'm really behind the curve. I've got a million things to do. I only had all flipping weekend to do it, but no, not really. No.
Are you a lastminute.com type person?
I'm a had it.com type person. It's like, should have done it, didn't do it, and now I'm high for the high jump type of person. Really annoyed myself.
Dear. Let's hope you can catch up. If you've had a lot of rest, you might have to burn the midnight oil, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
Indeed. Right, okay, shall I take the risk? Shall I? What have our listeners Shall I ask you? Yeah, go on then, I'll be daring. Shall I ask you to say hello to our audience?
This has rapidly become my best part of my week. Which I think in a way is kind of sad also. But yes. All right, well, let's do it. Hello, audience.
Yay.
So anyway, Tony, this is quite a nice one. What is a Yankee?
A Yankee?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm familiar with, there's two things. One is something to do with the US, and the other one is a candle. But otherwise,
no.
Go on.
A Yankee is the same as a quickie, but the guy can do it alone.
Oh dear Lord, that's terrible. It's actually funny. Oh, God.
You'll never hear the word Yankee.
No, I know, without laughing. Oh dear. Anyway, let's get some a semblance of normality here. No. Okay, let's get on with our show. And today we've got another one of our popular TNT Dynamite Conspiracy episodes. And today we discuss what is the Great Reset. Ooh. Now, Taya, I'm not sure you know a lot about this one actually, because I picked this topic, but do you want to let our audience know what you know about it? If anything, of course.
Well, I did some research. And I don't know, from my reading of it, and I haven't done a great deal of reading on it, so I will be guided by you during this entire episode. But as I understand it, in a nutshell, the Great Reset refers to a global agenda by some of the elite. I may or may not be wrong in thinking, is this Carl Schwab of the WEF or whatever it's called? And it's basically, on the surface, there are two problems with this Great Reset thing, okay? One is what we're told it is, and the other is what the conspiracy theorists say it is. And I don't know enough to decide whether the conspiracy theorists are just talking hot air or if there's something there. So taking it as read, taking it as it's presented, it's supposed to be a benign system, if you like, or interlocking of systems to guarantee the safe, sustainable development of the planet.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. But it's done by, again, a cabal in the background.
That's an interesting word, and I think it's an unfortunate word because it already has connotations. A cabal has connotations. Could be because you could have said a group. So why are you saying cabal? It's already
straight away because cabal is viewed as secret and
Yes.
sneaky, isn't it? Something in the background. Yeah, I think it was also it was taken out of context. But I mean, just to clarify, you were correct with Klaus Schwab. He's the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, WEF, as you rightly said. And he said something whilst the pandemic was going ahead. And people took that and twisted it, because he was basically saying that the pandemic, I'll actually read his quote, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. So he actually said that, okay? But what he was referring to was to explore plans that countries might recover from the economic damage caused by the coronavirus, but do it in a sustained way that everybody benefits and nobody gets left behind, because there was issues with the haves and have-nots in the pandemic. The ones that had the money to get the vaccine developed and then deployed amongst their population, they saw their economies quickly recover, whilst there's still some countries in the world still behind the curve, which I use your words at the start of the show. It's because they haven't had the wealth, the way for all, the industry to allow their economies to recover. But the fact that this chap had said this was twisted, as if it was some way a plan to control everybody. And this is the opportunity that they took with COVID, as if it was COVID was the instrument and beginning of this plan, in order to somehow disable the world population so that they could enact their behind the scenes conspiracy.
Nefarious.
Exactly. And then do whatever they wanted to do to take over the world, as the eyes of the conspiracies seem to suggest. But that's it really. But it's like anything. When somebody is afraid, and during the pandemic itself, a lot of people were afraid because there's a lot of unknowns. Is this the pandemic in its early days? People followed what the government wanted them to do, which was lock down, stay away from others, because they hoped, and I dare say we on here felt the same, that the lockdown wouldn't last long, we would get over the curve, and things would then get back to normal. But what we then subsequently discovered is this virus was killing people, but thankfully it progressed and got less, what's the word? Damaging to us? Virulent, that's the word, thank you. And so we're able to get back to normal, although it's taken nearly 2.5 years. But the Great Reset is somebody almost literally looking for answers, hearing this and seeing a negative view of it and trying to twist it in a way that makes it sound ominous and, oh my goodness, we're all doomed, all our freedoms will be taken away, this is all that's happening, the lockdowns are taking all our liberty away, this is the beginning of the end, blah blah blah. And when you're in fear and somebody stands up and says, I know the real reason it's this, and your knowledge is still low on the information being presented, you will take that on face value and think, oh, what if it's true? And you question.
Actually, I really hate people who say, so you're saying, because in my opinion, the BBC journalists in particular, they use the technique to put words into the other person's mouth. You know, for instance, I could turn around now and say, so you're saying that the Yeti is real?
Oh, yeah.
And you'd be like, huh, what?
No,
and they say, well, we're sorry, that's all we have time for now.
Yeah, and you never
like,
have a chance to defend.
So, no, I'll take that back. I'm going to ask, rather than say, so you're saying, let me ask. So, do I understand what you mean? But do I understand that you mean that there is no conspiracy behind this idea of the Great Reset. Is that what you're saying?
I've done some research for this show because I'd heard about the Great Reset before and I'd seen some articles about it. And the articles made sense, but they were short on evidence, as we'd like to see. And they made claims, which on the surface sounded interesting. But again, there was no evidence to back up what they were saying. They were coming up with this, oh, because he said this is what he meant, so this is what's going to happen. It's like, hold on. All we've got is what he said. We didn't have any more than that. We had a 180-page book that they produced, which again didn't go into in much detail as to what this Great Reset was supposed to do. It was to align countries in a rough way so that they wouldn't get caught out like this again. And it was to try and allow industries to have an influence on the global affairs because they're quick to the mark. So governments sort of partner with industry more so things get done quicker. So if scenarios like this will rise again, companies and governments have closer links so the government can say, look, we need this, and things can then get moved forward rather than wasting that time to create those links with the companies and establish a working platform, so to speak. But that was viewed as a negative.
I read a book. Well, I read parts of a book called Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order. It was published in November. It was published on the 16th of November, 2018. So I think that was before COVID.
Yes, it was.
By Patrick M. Wood. And in it, he doesn't allude to the Great Reset, but he does say that there are people trying to hide a strategy of domination and control behind something that they call sustainable development. This is what this book alleges. And other people allege that because at the time the Great Reset had not been elucidated, this is what he was referring to. He was referring to the Great Reset, but that phrase hadn't been coined at that stage.
Right.
At that stage, the coined phrase, the accepted phrase was sustainable development.
Okay.
If you accept the link, because people can argue, I don't accept the link, and then that's kind of the end of the argument. But there's a journalist called James Corbett.
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah, and he's got something that he publishes. He's got a column, I think it's called the Corbett Report.
In which newspaper? Where is this? Is it a newspaper?
I'll have to look that up for you and let you know. Okay. I just got the quotations from the Corbett Report.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sure people can find it easily. On the 16th of October, 2020, in his Corbett Report, and I'm going to quote here, James Corbett says, "The Great Reset is a new social contract that ties every person to it through an electronic ID linked to your bank account and health records, and a social credits ID that will end up dictating every facet of your life," end quote. And the idea behind that requirement of the social contract is for the sake of sustainable development, so that we don't run out of resources and we don't burn ourselves, into extinction. This is the connection between what Wood, what was his name again? Patrick Wood was saying, and this is the connection. Is that sustainable development with the global warming aspect and so on and so forth, and that is what it's all about. By the way, I'm hearing a kind of weird buzzing. Is that me or you?
It must be you. I'm not getting any buzzing at my end. Okay.
Can I hear that?
No.
I'm sorry for the audience.
Your connection, your headpiece, or whatever, maybe, I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, no, there's nothing we can pick. We're not picking up any buzzing here. It's crystal clear. So our listeners, I hope, are not picking up anything, but I think it's all crystal clear. I mean, I think part of the problem was where they were, as part of this great reset, which wasn't meant to be a it wasn't meant to be a way of controlling people. It was meant to be to gain resources so that they could be put aside, ready for issues such as this. So it's a bit like what the World Bank does, but do it with resources so that they're available at a drop of a hat should they be needed. Almost like you're paying insurance to have this kind of protection that is there on the sideline. And maybe that's my sort of loose interpretation of what I'm seeing here. But they were talking about a wealth tax and also stopping subsidies for fossil fuel fossil fuel excavation to stop, because at the minute they're still getting subsidized. The banks are still giving them money.
They're making billions of dollars.
Yeah, already, and they're still getting subsidies in order to find more.
And if they can't do it on their own because the billions of dollars of profit doesn't work, then we should just simply nationalize them.
Well, there's
say, okay, guys, the profit is too small for you. In that case, we'll take over. And then you see them running around saying, you can't do nationalizing.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
in that case, go out and explore. And you need to put X percentage of your profits back into exploration, or we'll just take it off you in the form of taxes.
I mean,
so I think that could be done easily, but unfortunately, and this is a bit of actually, I'll tie it into our discussion later. I was listening earlier this evening to two people speaking about how in the 60s and earlier, even into the early 70s, to be in government in the UK and to be caught doing something untoward, especially fiscally, would have been the automatic end of your career.
Indeed.
Nowadays, we've got people caught not paying their taxes, having bank accounts overseas, all sorts of things, and they just carry on as if nothing's wrong, right? And I will just bear that thought in mind, because I'll come back to it. The thing that Wood was talking about with this sustainable development, and that touches on what you were saying, is that one of the goals of the sustainable development idea is something called a public-private partnership.
Yes.
And if, like me, you were wondering what the heck is a public-private partnership, apparently it involves the collaboration between a government agency and a private sector company. And it's that interweaving will be used to finance, build, and operate projects. So you see what you're saying about how the pandemic, the pandemic, how Schwab was saying that it needed a response, a cohesive response, in order to concentrate the alliances of means of production and sources of raw materials and pathways of distribution. Right? How would you bring all that together? Well, it seems to me that Wood has got it right. He predicted it in 2018 because the talk is that's the public-private partnership. That's what it is. But if you accept the public-private partnership, because first of all, you hear it, you go, well, that's not so bad. What's the matter with the government? Just as we were talking about the oil. Remember I said I'll bring it back to the oil thing?
Yeah.
What's the matter with private industry and government working hand in hand, so to speak, for the good of everyone's common good? Yeah, the thing is, it sounds like a good idea. And then you start thinking about the corollaries to it. What else, A means B, B means C, C means D. So really, if you start with A, you are going to wind up with D, right? You see, it's sort of, you have to think about the necessary corollaries, corollaries that come along with this partnership.
This is implying that the partnerships that they would gazump the governments.
Well, where has that not happened? Private-public partnerships often involve concessions. It is written, Wood writes, involves concessions of tax and other operating revenue and protection from liability. Where have we heard that before?
Yes.
And he wrote this in 2018. Don't forget. Published it in 2018. I don't know when he wrote it. He could have written it earlier, right? Or partial ownership rights over nominally public services. Say, well, if I'm going to distribute this to you, then I want to have a hand in logistics and so on and so forth. And, your department is going to be subservient to my requirements because, hey, it's an emergency. Hey,
indeed, it's an emergency. Yes, exactly. Well, that's exactly, you're absolutely spot on, though. That's what happened during COVID.
Mr. Wood is spot on. I'm just quoting what he thought.
It's exactly what happened in COVID.
It's exactly
and we touched on it. Yeah, exactly. Because there wasn't this link. The governments of the world were reaching out to the pharmaceutical companies to produce something that they were willing to pay for, but they said, look, drop everything else, we need you to focus on this. Now, the pharmaceutical companies, in their right, didn't need to do that if they didn't want to. And the government said, look, if you fast track this, we'll give you some sweeteners. We'll exempt you if things, go wrong. We just need you to produce something. We need it quickly. Can you do it? We'll give you this amount of money. The companies are going to go, okay, well, we also want this in return. Okay. And that's where the deal is struck. That's because the governments of the world were desperate because they could see this impending doomsday scenario if it carried on as it was. So they had to approach the pharmaceutical companies. And as part of the negotiation and the deal, they bent over backwards to accommodate the pharmaceutical companies. And as you've rightly said, they were exempt, some of them, at certain points because of part of the deal that had to be done. So this happens anyway. It's almost like people are shocked by it. What do you mean? They let them get away with these things? When the government was in a situation that it was in, not just the British government, but governments all around the world, they were scrambling to protect their populations. And so they had to make deals they wouldn't normally do or ordinarily give away so many concessions. But because of the urgency of the situation, they felt the need to do so. And hence we have these agreements that, if you look at it in a cold light of day, are not very palatable because you think, oh, what? They let them get away with this? Really? And so that's the questions are asked. But at the time, when the state of the emergency, you would do it because you're desperate. I've often likened it. Go on, I'll let you go on.
Go on.
I was just going to give a simple example of a scenario. You got a burning car and your family's in the car and you can't get them out. Do you call the AA or do you smash the windows?
Yeah.
You smash the windows. You do everything you can for the situation that's needed. You don't do the pleasantries. You get them to lean back. You smash the windows to get them out. You don't think
what is
of
the AA
nicety.
for our international audience?
Oh, international. AA is the Automobile Association. It's like it's the motor clubs that they have to protect your car if you break down on the road somewhere.
No, let me explain it because you give a very British explanations. Still leave people thinking, what? Okay, so if, like me, you grew up in a country like Nigeria, when your car breaks down at the side of the road, which in a country like Nigeria is quite often because most cars aren't new, you've got to find a way of getting out of the car, getting into public transport of some sort, or flagging someone down for some aid, depending on how remote you are, driving off to the next village or next town, finding a mechanic and bringing the mechanic back to your car and to sort out your vehicle.
Indeed.
In a first world country like the UK, you don't have to do that. You belong to an association or what they call a motoring club. And if you break down on the side of the road, what you do is you pick up your phone and you call the motoring club, and they will send out a mechanic, a mechanic to you to come and help you sort out your car by the side of the road. So that's what you have. And the AA is one of those clubs. Another one is the RAC.
Yeah.
Royal Automobile Company, I think it's what is it?
Royal Automobile. I don't know what the C stands for.
I don't know what the C stands for. But anyway, I just want to say that apart from the AA, there are others.
Yeah, Green Flag. We have to name them all while we're here. So yeah.
Sorry?
A Green Flag, that's another one.
I only know those two. But I think there are
Green
others.
Flag's another one. Yeah, there's others.
So try to be as fair as possible to everyone. Right. So okay. So as what you're saying, what I want to I get from you is that without knowing it, you've put your foot on the first rung of the ladder of escalation into towards this conspiracy level of the Great Reset. So it's very nice that you've said, yeah, yeah, you can understand that. So you see, the next thing is how do you how do you legalize that relationship in such a way that in future you don't get a Tayo or a Tony, becoming prime minister or getting hold of the reins of government and saying, let's just have a review of what happened there because it really stinks. And then you have a review, and then people who were formerly thought that they were safe because they were hiding behind the uh, coat trains of government or of their position as ministers, they find themselves suddenly in jeopardy. So the next thing you do is you create this concept of reflexive law. Now, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm right about this because the definition that I came across is not even a definition, it's a description of reflexive law, says that reflexive law affects the quality of outcomes without determining that the agreements will be reached.
Hey,
That's
that doesn't even
that's
make sense. Read that
and
again.
reflexive law affects the quality of outcomes without determining that the agreements will be reached. And the example given was Barack Obama signing what do they call it, executive orders to decrease um, greenhouse gases internationally, which should normally have been the job of Congress, of the Senate and Congress to do, the lawmakers.
Yeah.
But he did it as presidential fiat. And what he's trying to say is that the outcome was more important. Yes, the outcome is what is the determining factor, but it doesn't matter whether or not those agreements will be reached. It's just the fact that you've signed it, that you've said it, that you've done it.
That's terrible.
Well,
That's undermining democracy. You still want the
yep, yep. Well
democratic
done for spotting
process.
that.
You still want the democratic process to still be part of this.
A lot of people did
And
get it. Yeah.
yeah, you've got to, because otherwise you're now dictatorship. You're getting somebody to then run things without the say of the people. And the whole point of democracy
Mm-hmm.
is that we have a say. Now,
Now, hold on.
yeah,
Just
go
keep
on.
that thought. Well done for spotting it. I don't think a lot of people have spotted that quite as quickly. Now, in the international arena, if you don't have laws because you haven't gone through Congress and other countries haven't gone through Parliament and all that, it's
Yeah,
just that kind of level of the of fiat, if you like.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, what you then have is something you've heard of, but you probably didn't recognize where it came from: the rules-based order.
Ah.
And again, that's an underpinning of the Great Reset. It's a rules-based order, not a law-based order.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
Explain to our listeners, because some people might be confused by the two.
okay. Well, a law-based order is someone writes down an institution or people, the correct people, the people who are meant to, the people that we elect
Yeah.
to
Come up with laws.
create laws. The laws are written down. We read them, we try to understand them, and we test them in a court. And the court tells us this is the meaning of the law. But essentially, everyone has an equal opportunity to understand the law and to work with the law and to stay within the law because it's all written down, stated in black and white. And most importantly, using the Western system at least, you have case history.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've treated Tony one way based on this law, you can't treat Tayo a different way based on the same law.
Yeah.
Have to treat Tayo
The
the same
same.
way you treated Tony. That makes Tayo more comfortable when he's dealing with the law because I could say, well, at least they'll have to treat me like they treated Tony,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that is a law-based order. And in the international arena, countries look at documents and treaties they've signed and they said, well, this is the law. This is what it says. And maybe it's tested at The Hague or wherever they can test international law. If it's economic, I think you go to the, what's it called again? Where all the economic people go.
World Economic Forum. It is this.
No,
This is where
no,
they talk about it.
no.
What, the economic ones?
It's not the G20. It's one of these things where everybody. It's a big organization. It's really been around for a long time, and it's when you have like when Britain had a problem with France over the fish, they were threatening to take us to
United Nations.
no the economic one,
Oh.
the one for trading for commerce.
Oh yes. Oh, goodness me. Yes, I know which one you mean because they were. That's what we were having. Isn't the one we were supposed to drop to when we left the EU?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
precisely.
yeah. It's oh goodness me, how can we forget what that is? Yeah, it's the one that you can trade at the lowest level, but it's not actually
Everybody
the lowest
belongs.
level.
Most nations
Yeah,
belong to
belong
it,
to
and you
it.
can
Yeah,
go
yeah,
to it
yeah.
and come. So again, you can go to it because you've got these laws there. Now, the alternative to that is you have the rules-based rules-based system, which essentially means that it's by fiat. It's by somebody saying somebody the most if you like the most powerful saying these are the rules. All right.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, as Sergei Lavrov, who I don't know if you know who he is, he's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Russian
Russian
foreign
foreign
minister.
secretary or whatever he's
Yeah,
called. Yeah.
foreign minister. He's just finished saying that right now it's America that writes the rules, but because the rules are more or less in America's head, if you like, it's not something that's been agreed upon internationally. It can be anything from moment to moment. So Tony can be treated one way, and Ty can be treated another way, and American can actually say it doesn't even apply to us.
Yeah.
Right? But the idea behind it is not blatant, just like, yeah, we're going to do what we want. The idea behind it is to invest the public-private partnership with meaning and with gravitas and with ability in order to quickly bypass bottlenecks in governance worldwide. Because the idea during this COVID thing wasn't that, look, we don't have time to sit down and negotiate with 198 countries in the UN. This is an emergency. We need to do X, Y, Z quickly. And a lot of people who are panicking over the what's it called, global heat warming.
Yeah.
I think we don't have time to keep arguing every 5 years. We meet, we have a big conference. The Chinese say no, then the Americans say no, then this say no, like we've got to get this thing sorted out. And the quickest possible way of getting it sorted out is to move to this rules-based reflexive law type of thing, where we know where we're going. So the way
that should only be during emergencies. We could understand that because governments gave themselves power. They did actually vote in their parliaments to do it, mind you. They gave themselves power, extra powers that they wouldn't normally have, to allow them to respond quickly during a pandemic or a series of emergencies. And then those rules do not last forever. They get reviewed every 2-3 months, whatever the period was agreed, so that they get given emergency powers to bring certain rules in place, which obviously they don't have to go through Parliament because Parliament almost signed them the blank check whilst the pandemic was on. So the justification was pandemic was on, Parliament needed to be more agile. They couldn't go through all the steps that they would normally go through because it took too long, as you rightly said. So they get emergency powers, which then give them a number of what's the word I'm looking for? A number of they've got more powers. They can do more without asking for permission. They can just do it in order to deal with the situation as it stood. So that power is what people frowned upon because they thought that once the government's got this rule-based power, as you rightly say, they wouldn't want to relinquish it. They'd want to keep it and say, well, I can do so much more with this power. I don't have to go through the hoops and all the rigmarole of going through the proper procedures. I can do it via this quick route, get more done. And you can see the logic, but that then moves away from what we stand for in the West, which is democracy, where elected members can then contest the laws. If they don't like it, vote against it to make their feelings heard. So people are taken into account when a law comes in. So they don't just do it. Everyone is aware that they're planning to do it and has to be voted on. That's a democracy.
Well, they thought of that. And they came up with something called collaborative governance.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Right. So the idea of collaborative governance is that there will be a devolution of power away from the center and down towards the local, which is something that I think I've argued for myself in one of our early podcasts when we said, "What does democracy work?" And I said I wanted like local councils to be far more powerful than the central government. Central government should deal only with
big stuff,
military things,
big national
road systems and things like that. But everything else should be done it. Well, that is the idea behind this devolution of federal government. But devolution has got a couple of things in mind. One is actually the destruction of federal governments, of countries. More countries.
See, that I'm not sure. I think that's a leap too far. I mean, what you've said about the devolved rule,
because everything would be done at city level. So the city of London and the city of Manchester, these are huge boroughs. Los Angeles, New York, these are fantastic. Commercially speaking, these are fantastic enterprises.
But they're countries in their own right, almost, because they've got so many people.
Almost, they're right. And then if they had a collaboration amongst them, what do you need countries for? It's because it will help even get rid of wars. What, you won't be fighting over resources. Everybody be working towards. By the way, not fighting over resources leads to more corollaries, which are even. You see, it's all cascades. It all starts from one idea, and it keeps building and building and building.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure it's gone that far, but go on.
No, it hasn't gone that far. It's
yeah, but that's the idea. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I would offer to you. Well, I don't know if you're going to buy it, but let's see. The idea that seemingly, the EU caves in to American pressure over the war in Ukraine and Russia, even to the detriment of the EU. But if it's a collaboration between Washington and the other countries and the other nations, and we're all moving away and moving in towards one, I don't know what you call it, USA, Europe kind of conglomeration, if you like, then there's no reason to express any fear, because the Americans would basically be doing it to themselves, which doesn't make sense. Do you see? So
I don't see how. I mean, this seems like a theory on paper. I'm not seeing how this could even manifest itself. And the argument
it manifests itself by the move more and more towards the EU, more and more away from nation states inside the EU, to the point where nation states are basically meaningless, and open borders, which you already have. And the whole thing it's the beginning of a full merge. One army, one everything. Maybe even one police force.
What's wrong with that? America has got that now. It's got its individual 50 states.
You merge that with America. America merges that with Canada, and Canada merges it with Japan, and Japan merges it with China, and China merges it with Russia. And in the long run, what you have is a global community, supposedly a collaborative one of equals.
Okay.
Supposedly.
In principle and in theory, on paper, actually sounds great. You have a united federation of the planet.
Communism sounds fantastic.
Communism, yeah. But are you actually looking at the needs of the individual in Bolivia? Are you looking at the individual's needs?
Remember, have I said it already? Have I not already said? What did I say? I think I have.
Yeah.
that
Low level, you have
is a
strategic
new contract.
partnership
Did I mention
agreement.
about the because social reset is a new social contract?
No,
Yeah,
you
I did
didn't
say.
mention that. No, you didn't. No, not the social contract.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is going back to the Corbyn report, which is the one that ties in, by the way. Remember, I said the Corbyn report is the one that
Yeah,
sows
yeah, yeah, yeah. That sews it all in. Okay.
wood sustainable development to the Great Reset. And I'm pretty sure I said that the Great Reset is a new social contract that ties everyone to it through an electronic ID.
Oh, yes, you did. The electronic
So the guy in
ID.
Bolivia and the guy in
Kurdistan.
Kurdistan and the guy in Chongqing
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
guy in Bristol,
Hmm.
they're all tied in to this one global collective.
And to do
And
what?
resources will be moved around
To meet their requirements
to meet the
individually.
requirements.
Okay.
As long as you agree to their terms and conditions. Now, people outside the UK might be, in fact, a lot of people in the UK might be shocked to learn that a council here in the UK is actually trialing um, a system where you are encouraged, very nearly forced, to travel only 20 minutes from your house.
Yeah.
And that is the Oxford City Council.
Yeah. They're doing a trial and see if it's viable. It's to protect the environment, apparently. It's in order to keep people within their local community so they don't have to travel loads of distances for different things. But you're now creeping on freedoms here.
Creeping,
So you know
you're
that
trampling all over it with a herd of
I'm
elephants.
being modest. Yes, it's not good. But then again,
That's
this idea,
serfdom.
you see,
If you don't have I mean, what is freedom? Freedom is the right to choose how you live. If someone's going to tell you how to live, and they're always going to quote it, they're always going to paint it, and this is good for everyone. This is for
yeah,
your own good.
exactly.
When someone starts worrying about your own good more than you worry about, you can smell a rat straight away.
Mm.
And anyway, so not trying to lose sight of where we are. When you said this, I was talking about this great collaboration, about this collaborative governance. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
this collaborative governance. But the collaborative government, and I believe Schwab, whatever his first name is, it Carl? Carl Schwab.
Carl Schwab. Yeah,
I believe he's actually
Klaus Schwab.
Klaus. So
Klaus.
Klaus. I believe he's already mentioned. I believe he mentioned this that this great governance should be driven by technology.
Yeah, it was one of the pillars
Yes,
of
under the
the whole
aegis
point.
of a scientific dictatorship. A
Okay.
scientific dictatorship because they are the intelligentsia of the planet, because they are the repositories, the living repositories of knowledge, and with supposed scientific dispassion, which I
Mm.
think we know doesn't exist,
No.
that they would rule wisely and scientifically in
You
everyone's
see,
best interest.
you see, if you think about this logically but unemotionally, we touched on it on one of the other shows about communism in its purest sense. In its purest sense, it actually makes sense in so much that people share resources of the planet. The planet's resources are finite. You share them, so fundamental things everyone should have access to. For food, for instance, it's not a privilege. Food is a right. As a human, you need to eat to survive. So everyone should have the same food. And in fact, the strange thing is there is enough food to go round for the whole planet. But even now, today, there's still almost half the world's population go to bed hungry or malnourished, even though there is enough food on the whole planet to feed everybody.
Mm.
In the West, for instance, we have way more than we need. And if there was a way of still keeping some in reserve for emergencies, but enabling it to cross the planet in strategic ways that people can be fed, then that's a good thing. That's an altruistic thing. So that in a way, that sounds good and would be great, where everybody gets at least food. Other
Number one,
things,
no one should be allowed to throw food away. When I say no one should be allowed, I mean food producers. who produce too much and they can't sell it, just throw it away.
I know. There must be a way
There
of
has to be a way
repurposing that
of
food.
figuring
Yeah,
it out so
exactly.
that
It's
that's not
being
sustainable.
clever. And this is what the World Economic Forum was actually looking at. It wasn't doing it in a sinister way.
Mm-hmm.
It was to actually look at how could we use existing world resources? How could it be done in a way that more people can actually benefit, rather than having this disparaging way that we have in society at the minute, where you've got at one end of the spectrum, you've got super billionaires who own the majority of the planet and its resources, and you have everybody else make do with the rest, and the vast majority have literally next to nothing. And so his vision wasn't actually a negative one. It was a positive view. However, people have grasped his idea as if it was to shackle our freedoms, remove them. It's some communist regime of control that we will be hidden away, unable to do what we did before, or that we can't have our 5 litre truck. We're not allowed that anymore. We can't have our steaks because we've got used to it. Because the challenge we have is the people that are used to having the abundance don't want to give any of it up. So they're the ones who shout the loudest, not because they don't have enough. It's because they feel that why should the poor people have some when it's mine? And it's this attitude that we have to somehow,
Let
quell,
them
I
eat cake.
suppose. Yeah, it's almost that way. It's
Which,
almost like,
by the way, they said I'm afraid she'd never really said. She didn't say, but
did she not
apparently, Queen Marie Antoinette
let them eat cake? Did she not
never
say
said
that?
it. No,
I thought
apparently.
she did.
She's
Okay,
repeated to have said it, and
we've
everybody thinks she
digressed
said
slightly, but yeah.
it. Well, we have. If we don't digress, it won't be a TNT talk show episode, and people will start writing in. So what the heck is going on there?
Indeed. Well, anyway, so going back to what we're saying, yes, people have jumped on the bandwagon as if it is some sort of mechanism to control the population, and you've touched on some genuine concerns there. So it's not that far removed from what a lot of conspiracy people think the Great Reset is, where it's some element of control. But if you look at the actual,
I think you're hiding from yourself. I think you're just not seeing that thing I said about corollaries is spot on. It's inevitable.
So you think it won't? This is not something that will be looked at and dismissed. You think it's going to happen? Period.
It has to. No. I mean, I don't think the Great Reset is going to happen because I think the world population is going to say, I don't think so. Thank you very much. I mean, that's basically one of the things that Russia and China are fighting about right now. So, no, it's not going to happen. I think the rise of the BRICS is the end of the Great Reset. It's done and dusted. So hopefully, that's that. But
explain that for our listeners, the BRICS, because people won't understand that.
All right. So BRICS is BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they've formed a collective as a bulwark against
West
America and the EU, called the Collective West, because they said that with this rules-based order, and actually with the first gleanings of the Great Reset, that didn't work for them because it basically made them subservient to the ruling order, and they didn't see why they had to be, because their resources were going to be divvied up too.
Exactly. Right? It's everybody's resources.
Everyone's resources will be divvied up by the people basically in Washington.
And that's the problem with the whole point. It's like, well, who's making the rules? And this is the issue. If it was a rules-based system, but
a true collaboration,
yes, meant that everybody in every country, like the UN, effectively, but a more
the General Assembly of the UN, for instance,
yes, but permanent, that had real influence, then that would make it more democratic worldwide. So at the minute, it seems like the UN, although they do get some things done, it can be a talking shop at times. So if they had true, not power, I don't want to use that word, but if they had proper
Legitimacy.
influence, yeah, legitimacy and influence, that you had voted your representative into the council for your
No, I'm saying the General Assembly. That's everyone.
yeah, true,
So
true.
if you had 2/3 majority voting, qualified voting on the General Assembly, in the General Assembly, one country, one vote, all equal, no matter how big or how small you are,
Mm.
then whatever came out of that would genuinely have legitimacy globally.
Yes, yes,
It
indeed.
genuinely would. People would be
But
like,
would
well,
it be, you see, if that was it, you're talking at a global government there,
yeah,
in essence, yeah.
yeah, in essence.
Mm. Mm.
Maybe not at the executive level, but at the legal level,
But isn't that what's happening now? That is what's
that's
happening
what's
because
supposed to
executive.
happen now. That's what's meant to happen now. But you've got countries ruling into other countries and getting away with it at the
Mm.
same time as to turn around and blame third countries for doing the same thing. So
Yeah,
it's not. It's who you are, not it's not co-equal. It's that thing I said about
that's the
one
problem.
law
Yeah,
for
it's
Tony
not
and another law for
co-equal.
me.
Indeed.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, indeed. That's the problem. It's not co-equal.
It's not co-equal.
No, not at all.
And why I said that, I think you're not looking at this thing, and you're not understanding corollaries. I'm really having trouble with that word today, corollaries.
You are, you are.
The reason the reason I'm saying you're not looking at it is this: if you are going to monitor everyone on the planet, that's actually ubiquitous surveillance,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, which is
And we've
technology's here
started.
now.
The technology is here and it's being rolled out. In fact, I'd say it's actually in certain places in
What do you mean certain places? Everybody's got one in their pocket. We've got
oh
one.
right,
Think
okay.
about it. We've got this thing by stealth. We love it. We live on these things. For our listeners who can't see what I'm doing, I'm holding up my mobile phone here. That's what we've got in our pockets already. So why are we being fearful? We use it as it's our little computer that we carry around with us. It's not really a phone. And so most of the planet, even people in third world countries, have phones, and it's their way of communicating. And you can see where if they wanted to carry this forward, they wouldn't give someone an ID or a chip. They just give them a free phone and they'd take it because it's already here. So why are we fearful of it?
Well, we're fearful because we're ignorant. As you know, I only found out, was it yesterday or the day before? I think on Friday. I sent you a message saying I just found out what Facebook,
Oh
um,
yes, that link with your bank.
my bank.
Mm.
Facebook knows when I get into my bank. It knows when everything. By the way, if you go into Facebook, you go into your private settings, and private settings, and there's another setting inside. So you go into settings, and I
Hmm.
think you go into, I can't remember what you're going to. Is it
Yeah,
privacy or something?
yeah. I think you can check it. Yeah, it's
And
got
then
loads of stuff.
in there, it tells you, it says what Facebook knows about you.
Hmm.
Every single app
Mm.
on your phone, every single app. Because a lot of these apps, they say, do you want to sign up using Facebook?
Yeah,
And if you sign up using Facebook, Facebook knows when you're on it, how long you're on it, what you're doing on it,
for
and
data gathering. Yeah, yeah.
all
They
sorts of
pay them
data.
for it. Yeah.
And we go along with it. So again, it was that I was ignorant, and goodness sakes, I'm not a complete technological, numpty. You'd have thought that I'd have known about it, yet I was completely shocked when I saw it, and I've actually taken Facebook off my main phone now. And I have a one phone that's got nothing on it except Facebook. And there's nothing else, but they must have already gathered a lot of information. And what else on my phone is gathering this information?
Everything is all the different
So,
things. I
so
told
this
you that
is
story. I mean, our listeners, about my father, and before he passed away, um, I was explaining something to him. He hasn't even got internet in his house. I had my
mm,
phone in my pocket, and I mentioned something, and he hasn't got internet. He didn't have internet at the time, and so as soon as I went home, I go back on my PC and my phone, and there, lo and behold, adverts are shown to me of what I was having that discussion to him about. And it was a private discussion, just me and my dad in his house, no internet other than my phone being in my pocket. But it still listened in to the conversation, worked out I mentioned he should buy this thing. And lo and behold, I come home and there that thing is being advertised to me. It's like, what? How? Because the phone's listening to me in my pocket. So it is here already. Whether we feel we can turn it all off and unplug from the net, we're here. We're in it.
I think ubiquitous surveillance is a little bit more than just listening to your conversation. I think it's knowing what you look like and tracking your every movement.
Yeah, you want to take that extra stage, but we got cameras everywhere that can do that.
Well, that's what I meant by in some parts of the world, because I know in third world countries they just don't have the infrastructure.
No, we have. We're the most surveyed country in the world, apparently. The UK.
Well, we're supposed to be. I think it's actually South Korea.
Okay, still not a good thing to lead a table.
There was a program.
On. Yeah.
There was a program a few years ago. I don't know, on some terrestrial television here in the UK, I think. I believe it was. Something like a cable like Sky or something. And it had to do with being dropped off in the middle. I think it was the same guy that was doing it all the time. I don't think it was Bear Grylls. But he would be flown out to some country and dropped off somewhere, and then asked to make his way surreptitiously to a different place. And then some security agency in that area would be told, look, you've got this person here, catch him.
Yeah.
And to see if they could. And most of the time he got away with it. I think he was special forces, and he knew all sorts of super dodges and things like that. There was one occasion when he was in South Africa, and he had camouflaged himself so well that the soldiers were standing about 2 feet away from him.
I remember seeing this.
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
About 2 feet away from him, and they didn't see him.
How do they film this without people knowing? I don't get it.
No, I don't think he had the camera on himself.
Ah, I see.
He was carrying the camera.
Right, he was. Right.
Yeah, he wasn't accompanied.
Right, I was about to say, because otherwise you think, well, how is this being filmed?
No, that's what happened. He was the one carrying the camera.
Anyway,
and the thing is, in all these countries, I think he got away with it. In America, but in South Korea, they nabbed him.
They got him, did they?
Relatively quickly too. Wow. Because it's really, really tied down, I suppose, because of North Korea's belligerence. Well, I'm not going to say North Korea's belligerence, because of their problem with North Korea.
Yeah.
So they don't take the security,
I mean, Israel are the same.
Probably, yeah. I don't think he did one in Israel, actually. I don't think the Israelis would actually have.
No, they wouldn't be very keen to do the show.
In case they didn't nab him.
Yeah.
So, so the reason I bring it up is to say that I think South Korea is more heavily surveilled than the UK. Yeah. Okay. But I think in the West, we are far and away.
But is this part of this roadmap for digital cooperation? I mean, that's already there, though. All the companies, I mean, going back to our topic, the Great Reset, and this is the fear of the people who share this conspiracy. I mean...
One other thing.
Yeah.
The next corollary is to enhance and to enable and enhance universal surveillance. Guess what you have to do? You have to move away from you have to move into a cashless society.
Yeah, but that again...
Which we're doing. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we're already doing these things. It's like, it's because it's happening in this kind of like a scattergun kind of way. People think, oh, there's nothing here to see. It's happening.
Okay.
The web is being spun around us, and we're going around saying, no. You're missing the pattern.
It's the frog principle, yes. Isn't it?
Yes, it
is.
To
boil a frog.
Yeah, the boiling of
hot
very,
water
very slowly.
Or jump out, but you raise the heat slowly, and that's exactly what's happening. So you're saying that the Great Reset is actually happening. There is no Great Reset, but all the elements of the Great Reset are actually already upon us in stealth mode, appearing all around us. So in reality, are not dawning to the fact that it's actually already here.
Correct. And
To
I'm saying
what
that
end? To
when
what
we
end? And what's the end game here? What's the
well,
point of all
for
this?
but this it's an interesting what's the word I'm looking for? It's an interesting mix, conflation, if you like, between people who are genuinely trying to save the planet
Hmm.
and power hungry lunatics. People who love power for its own sake.
Yes. But
And
you can see that if it
and
becomes a rules-based system, but that's the point. I don't think these things have been brought onto us via any rule. It's the fact that the digital and IT industry, etc., are bringing these forward as good ideas for you to use, and they do help us. So the public are willingly taking them on anyway. They don't need to get any permission. It's just services that are being brought forward to give us benefits, and we are just being sold it. It's not like being done by stealth, and we're using your analogy, pitchforks and torches, because we're not happy with it. We're gracefully accepting it. 5G networks, they're going to bring faster technology to allow us more benefits, not necessarily to play faster games on your phone, but to give us more access to information, to allow us to have more autonomy. For instance, like our cars will be able to be driverless, which give us convenience and flexibility. But in order to do that, you're handing the car, it will be a commodity item, you're handing it to someone else to control. You no longer drive it. But these are the same happens in a plane or a train. You're not driving the plane or the train, but you still get on it. The same will happen with a car now. You'll actually rent the car while you need it. And this is the sort of thing that happens, which the technology will enable. So it's all enablers. And you're right, the surveillance part is something that the government and security people are not creeping more on, but they're doing it with the adage of protecting society and protecting individuals. But as long as you're keeping your nose clean, and that's the key, the rules and the laws are not going to be too constrictive. You can still have some modicum of freedom. The majority of people, I think.
I don't think I want some modicum of freedom. I don't think I want to be told that I can only go 20 minutes from my house.
No, that's now crossing the boundaries. I think
Yes,
we've
but
got
this is
some
how
sort of
everything
level.
starts. This is a thin edge of the wedge, which has always been my complaint.
Yeah.
That you start off with so-called good ideas, and then it gets out of hand. And by that time, like the boiling frog analogy you gave, it's too late. You've got to be able to look ahead and say, the general trajectory of this thing is terrible. It's not terrible now, but your general trajectory is terrible. And therefore, I don't agree with it now. And you're talking about it's not being done maliciously. There is malice because some things have been done in secret. I don't know how many of our listeners and people watching our videos, how many of them even know about the trials and tribulations of Dutch farmers? Right?
I mean,
And
I'm
why don't
mindful
you?
we're getting to the end of the show, but
Why don't
that's
we know
something
about
for
such
another
a
topic.
serious problem in that a third of the farms in Holland, in the Netherlands, which turns out to be a major agricultural producer. I didn't even know that. I just thought it was a small, European country. I had no idea that they were so important in world food, in providing food for the world. And a third of their farms are being shut down. But
I found
hardly
out
anybody.
why.
Go on.
It's to do with the fact that they're over farming and destroying their land. The reason why a third have been stopped, it's like, do you remember the quotas that they had for fish in the North Sea?
Yeah,
And they was all up in arms. And they say, well, the way that it was fishing, all the fish would have been
Would be gone.
destroyed and gone. So they had to do it to put the quotas in place. The same is happening in Holland. And the farmers didn't agree to this and they didn't like it.
No,
But the
nobody
government
likes a loss of
no,
income.
indeed. But they were being compensated, but they didn't want it. They went, no, we want our farms. But they couldn't quite get the fact that you're over farming, you're destroying the actual land which produces the crops, and it will have a negative effect on the land going
Isn't the
forward.
land destroyed already?
No,
Because as
but
I
it was
understand
getting
it,
there.
nothing grows if you don't give it fertilizer. And as I understand it, the problem was they were using nitrogen-based fertilizer, and the cows also were
Yep, there's also
creating
that as well. That was
methane and all this.
a secondary element. I think it was also the fact that they were destroying the actual land itself, over farming and causing degradation to the land, so
I don't
that
see
it
how
would
that's
almost
possible.
become
Because I think
well.
it's already happened. The reason I'm saying it's not possible is because it has already happened. If you don't use fertilizer in most European countries, in fact, in many places in Africa, if you don't use fertilizer, nothing will grow.
Yeah,
The crops won't grow. We've
but I
already
mean,
over farmed.
yeah.
So what's new?
But the thing is, it was to do with trying actually to protect it rather than
But
to
why didn't we
lose
hear
their
about it
livelihood.
in that
And
case?
that's a separate question. Why did we hear about this?
Why
But
didn't we?
we didn't. We didn't. That's right.
Yeah.
But
So I'm saying that is because it's malicious. You're
okay. So do you
saying there's
think
no
it's about the
problem.
reset to do with that? Because I'm mindful
I
of the
think it
time
is.
here.
I think it
Okay.
is.
So what's your final summary? Because the time is gone past what we should have
I
finished. What's
think
your
that
summary?
some people are trying to actually implement the Great Reset. I think the people at Davos are probably the center of it. That the private conversations that we're having in the noughties and in the onesies that you and I may have been aware, like everybody else on the planet, we're aware of these meetings, but we didn't know what was being discussed at those meetings. I think that is when the, if you like, conspiracy was
Was
created,
born.
brokered, and I think that people are trying to execute the project now. So I do
So you
think,
believe it?
yeah, I do.
The Great Reset is a thing, and it's the nefarious thing,
It's not
sinister.
nefarious. It's nefarious in as some people are implementing it, but the idea is largely misguided. So it's not by itself nefarious. Some people are hijacking or have hijacked it. I don't think they have hijacked it. I think they are in the process of hijacking it for their own narrow purposes, but that most of the people working on it are actually just misguided and they actually want to do good.
Okay. We could talk hours on this, but unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.